Hello and welcome. My name is Thomas McGee, and in this video, we're going to talk about what type of content you should create. Okay, so today I just wanted to share some really quick tips with you because one of the questions I get all the time, especially for people who are just getting started, is everybody says I should be creating content. What type of content should I create? But the first question we have to answer just really briefly is why create content to begin with? Let's say that you want to start going pro with your art, or you want to start your own independent brand or business or brick and mortar shop, or you want to go into coaching or consulting, or even just kind of do this project on the side. One of the things that is vital to doing that is gaining trust and authority with the audience and the people that you want to reach. And the absolute best way to do that without investing a whole bunch of time and money is creating content. Now, one of the things that a lot of people fall into in terms of first getting started is that I don't have all this camera gear, or I don't have podcasting equipment, or, I don't have time or resources or all those things. Here's the great thing. You can just get started. One of the things that I found very early on is I didn't have the video equipment. I didn't have the equipment to be able to do a podcast. So I started out blogging. I started out making sure that I was developing the practice of writing at least once a week and then publishing something that was genuinely useful for the people I wanted to serve. So that's the greatest thing about creating content, first and foremost, is that you can actually pick a format that's going to fit your particular style, as well as the amount of time and resources that you have at your disposal. Okay, so point number one that we're going to start with is format. So what is the actual medium that you're going to use in which to publish your content for the audience you're trying to reach? Okay, so there's four main ones that I recommend, and they kind of vary in terms of their reach and usefulness and times that you want to use them. Okay, so number one is just email. You don't actually even need a website for email. You could technically just start a ConvertKit account. So I'll leave a link below this video. You can just go to rightly.tv/ConvertKit and start a free 30-day trial. But what you can do is you can just have a squeeze page that you set up where people can sign up to hear from you monthly or weekly. And then what you can do is you just take that email list and you just email them something useful once a week. Recipes, tips, stock advice, house buying advice, whatever it is that is pertinent to what you're teaching and to your audience, just email them if you can weekly, if not monthly, something of use. It can just be a newsletter. It doesn't even have to be a newsletter. You can just treat it as a personal email that you're sending to your list. Number two is a blog, and this is probably the most common. And some of the benefits this has over just sending out an email is that it's a place that lives out there on the interwebs where somebody can go and they can share it a lot more easily than they can just forward an email. They can share it on social media. Search engines can pick it up, so that helps as well. And plus, it's just a longer form piece of content that you can go in more depth and detail. So a blog is a great way to go as well. Number three is a podcast. A podcast is great if you can get to that level of production. Maybe in a future video, I'll show you some of the gear and tools and software that you need to be able to set up a podcast. But a podcast is great because you can go into arguably the longest form amount of content possible. You can go for an hour and people will actually consume that whole hour. And the reason is because they are there. A lot of times people are listening to it on a commute or a jog or at the gym. Whereas other types of content, they have to give their undivided attention to consume it. So a podcast is really powerful in terms of how you reach your audience. And the number fourth thing that I typically recommend is video. Video can't typically be quite as long as a podcast, but it's powerful in the sense that people actually get to see you. They get to see your face. They get to see and interact with you. It's a lot more on a personal level. There's a lot more trust that you build with somebody when you can see them as opposed to even hearing them or just reading something that they wrote. Okay, and the next pillar, so-called, to consider when it comes to creating your content is frequency. So what I like to recommend is if you are going to step off out into the world of creating content, I would recommend commit to weekly. So do something once a week. If you're going to start out with that blog post, if you're going to start out with that email to your list, totally fine. Just commit to a day of the week that you're going to publish. Some people find this difficult in the sense that, oh, I got busy here or this thing came up. One of the things that will really help you in terms of making sure that you get that piece of content created is just actually schedule out a time, whether that's 30 minutes every morning, whether that is an hour on Friday or Saturday afternoon, whatever time makes the most sense for you. Schedule out that time on your calendar, block it out, and make sure that you stay to those periods to make sure that you're able to have that piece written or that podcast episode recorded and mastered in time for its publication date. Another thing that you can do that helps a lot is batch creating. So you can say just once a month, I'm going to create 4 or 5 blog posts or something like that, or 4 or 5 videos or podcast episodes. That's another great way to ensure that you maximize your time in terms of efficiency. But one of the reasons I do recommend that you stick to weekly at the least is that it's that level of consistency that's going to make the biggest impact on the people that you want to reach. If you go monthly, that's probably the bare minimum. But again, you're talking about people who it's just after a month's time, it's just really easy for people to just kind of lose track of what you do, who you are even. Not to say that people would forget you that quickly, but we just live in such a content heavy world that it helps to be in the forefront of people. Now, all that to say is that if you miss a week or two, that's totally fine. One of the bigger reasons why it's good to commit to a week is for you. It's even for an aspect. One of the things it's helped me going weekly for videos and podcasts is that it's a self-discipline thing as well. It just keeps you on track and making sure that things don't lapse for long periods of time. I've taken like a hiatus from the podcast, but that was intentional, right? It's one thing to make sure that you're doing things consistently. A lot of the reason as well is that also helps you ensure that you're always looking for and coming up with new ideas. Okay, and the final piece I'm going to talk about in this video is exactly what I just mentioned, which is ideas. A lot of people say, oh, but I don't have enough ideas to write about or to blog about or to make a video about once a week. So I'm going to create a completely separate video about the specific workflow I use to do this, but here's what you can do to get started. Create some sort of to-do list or task manager. I use Things by Cultured Code. Something, even if it's just a pen and paper, which works great as well. Get some sort of tool that's going to help you capture ideas really quickly, right? So as you're going through your day, as you're interacting with a client, as you're doing your work, as you're at the grocery store, whatever it is, you'll start to find that ideas come up pretty frequently, right? I could write an article about that. I just answered this question on Facebook. I could create a podcast episode. Most of the ideas I have for videos is actually work I'm doing with my clients. So I always make a point to write those down or to add them to things. And then what I do is once a week, I go through all those ideas, rank them in terms of what I think would be most useful to you. And then I create an outline in terms of what I'm going to cover in that particular piece of content. And then I consider what medium that's going to be best for. Is that best for a podcast? Is that best for video? That sort of thing. So I rank them and I go through my process when I start my writing time. I go through each of those ideas and I never am lacking of ideas. I never come to a point where I'm just staring at a blank canvas, as so many people as I have in the past have run into. I just go to that list. I'm always adding to it and I'm always pulling from it. So just doing that little tweak, that little hack makes an endless amount of difference when it comes to capturing ideas. Okay, so I just wanted to share those really quick tips with you today. I'd love to hear from you as well. What type of content are you creating? Are you doing a blog? Are you doing a podcast? Feel free to leave me a comment below this video. I'd love to check out what it is that you're making and what you're creating. As always, if you found this video useful, hit that like button, subscribe if you're not already, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.